The spirit of the challenge for me is not focused on word count so much as it is focused on progress. I cried right at the end of that chapter. I only have one more chapter and then I'm done with part 1. Hello friends, and welcome to the start of another NaNoWriMo writing vlog. I am off to a costume party to celebrate a friend's birthday as the one and only Rapunzel, in case you couldn't tell. And I didn't get a ton of writing in this morning, but I'm giving myself a break because it was a very rough, long week and we all deserve some rest. So I'm gonna go have a very good time and I will check in with you all on Sunday to talk more shop about the project. Hello from the first snow day of the season. It is Monday of week 2 of NaNoWriMo, and all of that jibber jabber last week about how easy it was to hit 1,000 words a day is already mocking me. This weekend we had a lovely time with friends, as I think you saw at least in part, but I was not hitting 1,000 words a day. I wrote very little on Saturday. We had other plans, that's all right. And Sunday I ended up spending a lot of time researching and ideating and talking with my partner, all of which was great and again was progress on the story, but it just didn't manifest in a ton of words. And today I've had 2 writing sessions. I wrote this morning and this evening, and still, like, my word count isn't particularly impressive. I think I'm at like 500 or 600 words, but that's because I heavily outlined earlier this weekend, and then as I drafted that into prose, I was deleting the outline, and it doesn't matter. Word count is not the primary goal here. Obviously, my hope as we progress through NaNoWriMo is to write 30,000 words in 30 days. But the thing that I want to build as progress is a habit that gets me closer to the end of my book. I don't think I've introduced the book in this vlog yet, so I'll give you a quick once-over of what I'm working on this NaNoWriMo, which is a Greek mythology retelling that I am working on called Project Laurels here on the channel. It remains great that I am working on it for the first time in what feels like months, but progress is not moving and shaking quite as quickly as it did last week. So I have been in very high spirits otherwise today because I am just loving the snow. And I'm now going to kind of switch gears. We have a loved one who's recovering from surgery this week too, so I'm putting together a little like care package of meal prepped food for their freezer, which is definitely one of my like love languages. So you'll probably catch some clips of me working on these many cooking projects. And in terms of the rest of the week, it's kind of a funny one. So tomorrow, I'll continue with this like sort of meal prep extravaganza that'll gobble up a lot of my non-writing free time. And then my husband is heading off to visit said family member. So I will be home alone starting this Wednesday through probably close to the end of next week, which means I'll have so much free time. So hopefully that means I can pick up on any progress that I might be behind on or have lost a little bit, because I don't know what else is going to entertain me. It's just going to be me for most of the week. So I'll check in a little bit later on, and I just wanted to say a true, proper hello, a quick once over for the vlog, and I hope the start of your Nano Week 2 is treating you well. Hello from Thursday. It has been a minute since I talked to you, although I'm sure for you it feels like no time has passed at all. But this week went a little bit off the rails. I think I've mentioned the last time we talked that a family member of ours was going to be having a medical procedure, and my husband was going to be out of town to go check in with them and support them. And I really wanted to send him with a bunch of homemade food. Like, I couldn't be there, but let me like take something off of your plate that way. And I also just I love cooking. Cooking is my love language. So I thought it would be a nice way to contribute, but all of this came together quite quickly. Like, we didn't know exactly when he would be going until like sub 48 hours of when he left. So on Monday night, I spent most of the evening trying to make way too many things at once. I don't know what bug I got that said I could cook like 3 meals at once. That was the wrong choice. So I successfully made 3 meals, but it took way too long. I was up way too late, and was then just like totally zapped on Tuesday and had more cooking I wanted to do on Tuesday evening. So I did not wake up early because I was up way too late the night before, and then that evening I opted to focus on meal prep instead of writing, which is a choice I'm very happy to have made, but it meant that I didn't write on Tuesday. And then Jake left yesterday, Wednesday, and I spent all of Wednesday handling the mountain of dishes that I had made on Tuesday. So I thought I might squeeze some time in on Wednesday, but I just gave up. I just said, I didn't give up. I let it go. I decided that something else was more important. So no words on Tuesday or Wednesday. Now we're here on Thursday, and I'm kind of feeling like torn in a couple different directions. The house is back in order, which is beautiful. But that application that I was working on pretty intensely in October, and that I had wrapped a major component of on November 1st, I'm encroaching on the deadline. So there are a couple other elements of that application that I need to hash out. So part of me was like, maybe, I'm already out of the rhythm with writing on Project Laurels. Maybe I'll just work on that application instead and pick up Laurels on the weekend. But I would like to get words down on the page. So I think there's a world where tonight I do a little bit of both. Like I spend maybe an hour writing on Project Laurels and then maybe an hour or two on the application. I also have time carved out this weekend for the application. Like what's 1 or 2 more days, right? So I might just leave it for the weekend, like take a breath, stop being so anxious about it, and try to kind of recoup some of my losses on Project Laurels. So that's the latest there. I think I might have talked to you before I wrote on Monday. Monday was rough. I really struggled to get I felt like I was at the computer and writing a lot, but the word count was like barely budging. So I'm curious if I sit down on the project today, like how I will feel. I'm very close to the end of a chapter. Is there a world where I read through it and I edit it a bunch and maybe that word count starts to pick up? Or is there a world where I finish the last couple paragraphs of this chapter and then kind of freeze up again because it's a new chapter in front of me and I need to outline? I don't know. But it's fine. It's a joy to get to work on this. It doesn't matter if I am hitting major word counts every day. Like the spirit of the challenge for me is not focused on word count so much as it is focused on progress in general and building writing habits that work. So that's the intention for the night. We're probably going to get a minimum of 1 hour writing in and potentially a little bit more than that. I just got back from a book walk, which was beautiful. Now that Jake is away, I'm taking myself on my own book walks. I've decided to start The Truth by Terry Pratchett as my solo book walk listen, which is really fun. I really wanted to read it in 2024 because it was an election year and The Truth is about the press. So I don't know, it just felt very interconnected to me. But 2024 came and went and now we're here at the end of 2025. So as I understand it, it's about the invention of the printing press in this magical world. Terry Pratchett, of course, writes comedic fantasy. He's just a joy to read. He's so funny and clever and whip smart. So I'm jazzed to read more. I don't know exactly where it's going. It seems to be about the combination of the invention of the printing press, tabloids and rumor mill gossipy stuff, maybe something in there about the abuse of the press. I don't know. We'll find out. But I really enjoyed that listen on my walk. And boy, it gets dark early. It is the dark times. I know it is the dark times, but I think I went on a walk from 4:15 to 4:45 and the sun set and was gone by the end of it. So I will take that it was refreshing and ignore the lack of daylight. Anyway, that's what's up. I just thought I would check in because I haven't talked to you guys or done anything on this project really in days. So this is the reset and we will pick it up from here. writing session for the night, and I just had to update because I cried right at the end of that chapter. I did not expect that, in part because, gosh, it's early in the book to feel quite so emotional, but in part because the last 2 writing sessions I've had where I've been working on this chapter have been so frustrating. And I think part of that frustration was just like knowing that the scene was so important to me. It is both part of the action plot and the personal plot that are going on in this book. It's like the seed of so much of what is about to unravel. And I was just really struggling with like finding the way in, and like I knew how important it was, how emotionally significant it was supposed to be, and I didn't feel like I was hitting those notes. I couldn't find a way to say the things that were important to say about what was happening. And I feel like I left the last couple sessions feeling really discouraged. But I sat down today and I reread what I'd already written, and it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was. Who'd have thought? And then I kind of realized I wanted to like restructure a tiny bit of how the conversation flowed. And in doing so, I kind of found that path in that I'd been looking for that brought all of these like very disparate pieces together and felt really like authentically emotional and evocative of the stakes of what was happening. And I'm so relieved. Like, it was so important to me to do it well, and I just kept being mad because I didn't feel like I was doing it well. But now I feel like I've landed that, and I'm really pleased with it. I'm sure it's not perfect. I'm sure there's a lot of work to do on it, but I feel like the bones are there. And I want to come away from this first draft feeling like the bones are there, like having told myself the story with all of its major beats, both plot and emotional. And the flow of that in particular just really felt organic. Like, it felt like how a conversation might unfold. It felt like an honest representation of the kinds of reactions somebody in this situation would have. And I wanted it to feel meaningful. And I just am really grateful that I got it there in the end. So I decided to stop at the end of the chapter. It was like a little more than 500 words in. Tomorrow morning, I will start on a new chapter. But already just this progress is crazy, right? Like, I haven't written 2 days this week. The days that I have written have come in under 1,000 words. But I finished a chapter last week. I finished a chapter this week. And a chapter a week was my original ideal pace that I don't think I have, like, ever executed on up until now. So, I'm feeling really good about that, too. Just like, we're moving. All these things that have been locked up in my head are coming to life. So I'm very pleased with that. I hope you guys are finding similar moments of real, like, self-assuredness that are coming out of all of your writing work this November. And I'll see you tomorrow. Hello from Saturday morning and from the end of this writing vlog. Week 2 of NaNoWriMo is wrapped, and I had a still very satisfying week, though technically less productive than week 1. Yesterday, Friday, I spent my morning writing session actually just updating my sort of like book database in Notion. I don't know if I've told you guys much about this, but in Notion, I have like a hub for everything related to Project Laurels, and that includes like a database where I'm recording all sorts of different details about each chapter that I write. So it's got like chapter title, chapter length, a brief like 3-sentence description of what happens in the chapter, and then there are a bunch of like interconnected databases inside of it. So I have an enormous character index. There are so many named characters in this book. So I flag every character that physically appears in the chapter. And then I also flag every character that is referenced in the chapter, and I capture those separately, which helps me just keep a sense of like who are the characters who, you know, really emerge as the most salient in such a large cast. It also helps me keep tabs on like when key people are introduced and when like key myths are introduced. Obviously, being a Greek mythology retelling, there are so many other little myths that were part of the cultural norm that I'm trying to make little nods to and weave into the story. I also document the settings of every chapter. So usually if there are multiple scenes in the chapter, they're set in different places. So I document like what city they're in and then also what setting within that city they're in, which is nice. It helps me make sure that I'm like, for one, having a variety of interesting settings, moving us around. And for two, it also helps me keep tabs on talking about the same setting consistently. So I should be able to, at the end of this process, like filter that database to like, let's say the Royal Gardens. And then, you know, from there, I can look at how I describe them in every place they appear and make sure that I'm being consistent, that there aren't any major like non sequiturs or things that don't make sense. And then the thing that I have not incorporated but do intend to incorporate are like themes. There are definitely several core themes in the book, and of course, each chapter is working to move the plot forward, but I want to also make sure that I am giving due time and consideration to each of the major themes. So I have like a little section of the database carved out for that, but I haven't nailed down exactly the like language I want to use for tracking that. Anyways, it's a really nice sort of like reflection process that I have when I finish a chapter, where I then pause. Sometimes I'll read it through, but not always. And then I go to my database and I update it with everything I need to know about that chapter. Because I'm writing at a slow pace, you know, this isn't a fast draft where, you know, in 2 months' time it'll be done. I am writing this probably over the course of at least a year. I know that I won't remember the things that I drafted in detail at the end of this process from the beginning of this process. So trying to like set myself up for success as I move into like the editing process on draft 2, which is so far away still, but I really like that. I would definitely recommend. I know every writer is different, but if any of that appeals to you, it was super easy to make in Notion. And I guess if anybody's interested, I could share like the basis of it as maybe like a template. I don't know, you tell me if that's of interest. But anyways, that was my morning writing session, not actually writing, but updating the database. And then Friday evening, I had just like a really nice low-key night. I ordered pizza. I watched the 2000s Pride and Prejudice for the first time with Keira Knightley. I'd never seen it before. It was really cute. I liked it. I must say, I think the internet has sold me such a high bar that like it didn't blow me away, but I really enjoyed it. I love a Regency romance, and I did not know the twists and turns of Pride and Prejudice. I did not read it in school. I enjoyed kind of being keyed in to some of the cultural touchstones that are in the movie. Anyways, and then I decided to start heavily outlining the first scene of chapter 10, and I literally did that in bed on my phone. I write on my phone a lot. I don't know if other people do this, but like in the car, in bed, I write in a Google Doc, and so it's always right there at my fingertips. And I pretty often draft on my phone. I draft on my phone when I'm on the train for my commute. So it was just me and my cell phone tapping. But I got about 660 words, I think, out of that outlining process. So well underway with chapter 10 as of last night. So overall, I took a look, and my official word count for week 2 of NaNoWriMo is just about 2,500 words. A little more than half of what I did last week, well under 1,000 words a day. But I completed a chapter. I only have one more chapter and then I'm done with part 1, which is crazy. Like, that feels like such a major milestone. The book has 4 parts. Technically it has like 4.5, but it has 4 major parts. And my intention is to, upon finishing part 1, give it a read through. Part of the opening scene in chapter 9, I think I'm gonna like scrap and rewrite, and I'm deciding if I'm gonna do that now or just like later at the end of this draft and the start of a new one. I'm kind of increasingly tempted to just rewrite it now because I want to give my husband a copy of part 1 to read through. He has just been like the ultimate sounding board and like idea editor with me for so much of this, and I think he knows what I want part 1 to accomplish, and he knows what I want the tone of the book to be. And I don't know if I'm like hitting that tone or not. So I would really like to get his read through and reaction to this first draft. Even though it's ugly, there are unnamed things in the copy that are just like X placeholders. But I think it'll be really helpful to have his input. I know lots of people are very intentional about only bringing in editorial voices later in the process, which I think makes a ton of sense if you've done this before. But because this is my first attempt at like really long form fiction writing, and Jake knows like the vibe I want it to have, I'd really like his input on if that is being conveyed. You know, like, I think I have written something, hopefully, that manages to be interesting and to set a very like ominous tone for the rest of the book, while also giving my main character, her due of having like this sort of coming of age period in the opening of the book. And I don't know if I'm hitting that balance. Like, maybe he's gonna read it and he's gonna be like, there are way too many named characters, I have no idea who anybody is. When you bring them back up later, I don't remember who they are. Like, there could be just a lot of like information overload that's happening that I'm blind to. And it could be that I'm not hitting that tone at all, and I want to know that going into the rest of the book. So, long story short, when I finish chapter 10, which I expect will happen next week, I'm going to do a read through and a cleanup, and then I'm going to print out part 1 and give it to Jake, which I'm really jazzed about. So that's what's to come on next week's NaNoWriMo vlog. But that's where I'm going to go ahead and end today's. I hope you all are doing well. I hope that Nano is treating you well. I would love to know how the month is going for you all. Did you hit your word goal this week? What are you working on? If you haven't already shared, I would love to know what you're working on, what you want out of National Novel Writing Month. And I'm curious, you know, since we're talking about the editorial process, like, when do you bring in outside perspective on your books, on your writing projects? I would love to know if you have like first readers or beta readers, and when you bring them into the fold. So let me know down below, and I will see you all soon with another video. Bye.